your talk, that is, you are going to shape people's lives. So the perspective that the today interaction designer or user experience designer have a lot of opportunity to reshape our life and to make better life, also in this context of COVID situation. So thank you again to be here. It's a pleasure. I will leave you the floor to you, and then we will come back with the question and answer after your presentation.
Okay, good. So, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
And now I'm playing, and you should just be able to see you.
Yeah, a small one.
Yes, good, okay. And so, can I hear any of the students or just you?
No, you can also hear them if you call them, because the rules are micro off and video off for everyone. But if you want to interact with them, you can call them, and then they can switch on the micro and interact with you.
Okay. Well, I will just imagine you, students out there, and you can see me. So, as Fernando was saying, my talk is about how you are going to shape people's lives. This is Steve Jobs, who said, "It's in Apple's DNA that technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields us the results that make our hearts sing." Now, hang on a sec. When I started my interaction design program at London's Royal College of Art in 1990, Apple was the only example of good design I could show students. We just had to make it up as we went along. A little bit of history. User experience, and in those days it was called human-computer interaction or human-computer interface, was born in World War II in the ergonomics of fighter planes looking like this Spitfire. And also, of course, at the same time, computing was born as well in code breaking at Bletchley Park, which is where Alan Turing was working. So this is the kind of cockpit that was really spawning the new discipline of ergonomics and human-computer interaction. And then in the 1970s, psychologists started to say, hey, we know something about people. You aren't using the basic things that we know about human cognition. What we know could help make applications easier for people to use. But it took a long time, 20, 30 years, before psychologists were really became involved in human-computer interaction. In the 1980s, we had the STAR interface, really the first graphical user interface. And at that time, designers were saying, hey, you aren't using the basic things we know about designing understandable information. And anthropologists were saying, you aren't using the basic things we know about how to observe and understand people in their contexts. And on that time also in the 80s was the time of the Mac, the small little bunchy Mac, which came out in 1983. So by the 1990s, by 1990, the cast of basic disciplines was in Xerox and at Apple: engineering, psychology, anthropology, design. But this was very rare. I'm just going back. When I first went to CHI, the Computer-Human Interaction Conference in Seattle in 1990, the psychology discipline was definitely dominant. Psychologists were trying to define scientific laws for the successful design of computer applications. In fact, when I went, people were very welcoming and very, very interested. They'd, "Oh, you're from the Royal College of Art. Why are you here?" And I found it difficult to explain what designers might be able to provide. So a successful product needs to be technically feasible, culturally desirable, and economically sustainable. You need engineers, business people, and artist designers and social scientists. And I like to distinguish between engineer designers and artist designers, because the word designer is so broad in English. It encompasses both engineers and artist designers, but they have very different approaches. So a successful product must answer, how can the product be built and manufactured? What do people need or want? What kinds of people in what situations? And why build it at all? Initially, how to make the technology work was the focus. The engineering mindset was essential, but it became dominant for a long time and still is in Silicon Valley. And then what do people need or want? What should we build? Tools, entertainment, digital life. And here we drew in the psychology mindset, thinking about cognition in individual users. But also, when we think about the what, we think about, well, what kinds of people and in what situations? And here the social science mindset is useful. Shadow, observe, analyze, but stand back, don't intervene. And then the why. Why are we building what we're building? What effect do we want it to have? Is there another way to get there? What undesirable effects might it have? So the design mindset, diverging, imagining, and prototyping many solutions, can be useful at this point. So all these approaches are useful in making a successful application. And I like to think about team cultures. People have different values. They prioritize different things. They have different ways of thinking, which are often subconscious. I'm reminded of one of my ex-students, Nick Durrant, who was an intern at Taligent, which was a joint venture between IBM and Apple looking at how to a new kind of operating system. He said to me, Gillian, you know, when we talk every week about what we're going to do that week and what we're going to prioritize, what we're not going to prioritize, the different disciplines think of it in different ways. So the business people talk about the deal. If you let me have this, if you do this for me, then I will let you do the other that I didn't think was a good idea. But if we can do a deal, I'm happy. The computer people thought about any deviation from their idea as a compromise, and compromise, by definition, was a bad thing. But the designers tended to talk about trade-offs. They knew they were dealing with wicked problems that didn't have a simple, perfect solution. And you needed to trade off advantages and disadvantages of different paths to take. And people have different values and prioritize different things. Like, for instance, some engineers are actually revolted by the soft, touchy-feelies, or they think that design is inauthentic, dressing things up to be not what they really are. Engineers tend to be convergent thinkers, designers divergent thinkers. And unless one understands this difference, each infuriates the others. Designers think engineers focus too quickly on a solution without exploring alternatives. And engineers think designers will never, ever get to a solution. So what can you take away from this? You'll be working with people from disciplines not your own, cultures not your own, which is great, but it can be a source of friction. So be aware of your own mental tramlines. Be curious and understanding of those of other people. Be ready to explain your discipline, the things you think are important, and why you think that. And accept that you can't get good at everything. You've probably spent more than 5 years or more beginning to be expert in your field. And in less than a year, you're unlikely to master someone else's, someone who's both temperament and skill for it. You'll probably be able to do the basics of another discipline's techniques, but you'll know your limits, and you'll know when you need to hire an expert, and you'll be able to tell the good from the bad. And you'll understand what they do, appreciate their skills, as they'll appreciate yours. And this is powerful. I know this from my experience at the Interaction Design Institute Ivrea, where we had people of a range of different backgrounds. And to begin with, they were a bit dismissive of each other. But when they saw what people could do, they were amazed and delighted. And this put a basis for their future careers, which is very, very strong. So how do we shape people's lives? So this is Langdon Winner in a book called Do Artifacts Have Politics? He says, consciously or unconsciously, deliberately or inadvertently, societies choose structures for technologies that influence how people are going to work, communicate, travel, consume, and so forth, over a very long time. Computers used to be tools for professionals, for their work. And they became expert in using them. But now they're used by a huge variety of ordinary people in their everyday lives. Lives which are ever more shaped by the digital environment that we designed for them. And the people we're now designing for are enormously varied in culture, education, age, interest, motivation. So this makes it difficult for us. but also very exciting. We shape people's lives by what we decide to build and why, which has come to be called design thinking. It's the more abstract side of designing an application or a device. We observe, we ask people, we identify problems and opportunities, we imagine and design possible solutions, and we prototype and test the most promising ideas. Are they feasible, desirable, economically sustainable? But what people have not been talking about is design doing. We shape people's lives by doing design, by designing what something is going to look like, how people will interact with it, the mental model we choose to represent it, and how overall it will fit with people's everyday life and culture. How do they perceive it? Can they understand it? Will they enjoy it, even if it's something which ostensibly would be boring, to do with their work? But even that can be a pleasure, and should be a pleasure. This is an example that I took about 3 years ago, because my Vodafone app was terrific. I would get a message saying I was running out of juice, of money in my phone. And all I had to do was to click on the application, and I got this screen. And this screen showed me everything I needed to know. And then I could click recharacter at the bottom, which means recharge. And off I went. But now, I'm awfully sorry to say, it looks like this. So that I have to click more than once, even to get into the app. And then I get them trying to sell me something. Vodafone TV. I don't have a TV. And then I click again, and I get this next screen when they're also trying to sell me something more. And it told me a bit about what I've got, but then I can just at the bottom see what that I can charge. The whole thing is a mess, and it's very, very inconvenient to use. So I think this is a really good example of how the way something is designed can fit the way people go about their everyday business, and is also a pleasure. I enjoyed that first screen 3 years ago. Now it's a mess, and as a designer, as a graphic designer, I'm offended. And this was another example. This was the Women's Health application, which I used every day, and it was jolly. And it was easy to see where I was because each element was color coded. But then it was taken over by Nokia. It was sold to Nokia, and they cleaned it up. And it was so depressing, and also not so effective and useful. So that's another example of kind of very simple things about how you use something, what kind of situation you're in, what kind of mindset, and how the way something's designed fits that mindset. And here's an example of, I think, my all-time favorite application, and in this case, a device. It was the Nokia N9 telephone. So you can look at it, you can look up Marco, Nokia N9 on Google, and you should be able to find the film. But let's play it now.
Every once in a while, a product comes along that changes our perception of how we use technology and how natural it can feel. We wanted to design a better way to use a phone, and it comes down to one simple gesture, a swipe. In an application, swiping from any edge of the screen takes you home. With no need for a home key, this all-screen phone makes more room for apps to shine and is incredibly easy to use. We looked at the most important things that people need to do with their phone every day, using apps, getting notifications, and switching between different activities. For each of these, we designed a recognizable home view. The first is where you launch and organize your applications. The second gathers all your notifications and social network feeds in one place. It's the fast and easy way to stay up to date. And the third view shows everything you've been doing recently. All your live apps are ready for you to pick up where you left off. This is the best multitasking on any phone.
So this is an example of a phone that had an interface was supremely simple to understand and to use. It felt good. It had beautiful graphics and animation. It was a triumph of design and engineering. Unfortunately, just when it came out, Nokia was sold to Microsoft, and they withdrew it. So I used it for as long as I could, but the was I couldn't even back up my contacts from on my Apple phone after a while. So if you don't have the ecology around it, the ecosystem, it's no good. So when you're designing, if your designs fail, people will be constantly bugged by low-level annoyances. They'll desert your product for a rival. They'll lose money, time or reputation. For instance, data breaches. British Airways, for instance, lost thousands of people's credit card numbers, addresses, etc. And their reputation really went down the tubes for that. But more serious problems can ensue. A couple of weeks ago, the British government admitted that thousands of pieces of information about people who had been arrested but not charged had just disappeared. And so this was going to have an effect on clearing up cases, providing evidence, etc. And that kind of thing, the trouble is, it's very easy to do. It's very easy to make mistakes. And so our job as designers must be to make it really, really difficult to make mistakes. And the worst thing can happen is that people might die. This was a crash many years ago when an aeroplane with passengers aboard came down in the M1 motorway, the main motorway from London to Birmingham. And the pilots were blamed for the crash. But actually, it wasn't only their fault. They hadn't been trained in the new version of this plane. So what they understood about the plane and the way that that air was funneled into the plane was now different. But also, in the past, had an interface with dials like that that you see on the right of this picture. So they're all a bit different. They're in different positions, they have different colours on, and they relate to things that happen in the aeroplane, in the cockpit, that the pilots know about. But then if they got a computer-based system, so these were all analog dials. The computer-based system to the left here meant that everything looked much, much more similar. And people, the pilots, didn't notice things that they should have noticed. And so there again was something that made it very difficult for people in a panic, smelling smoke coming in to the cockpit. And they didn't respond in the right way. Just because when you're in a panic, you don't think so logically. But if your designs succeed really well, people will prefer your product over rivals. They'll feel safe and secure, and they'll trust your brand. And they won't be constantly bugged by low-level annoyances. I don't know about you, but I'm sure you have the same thing. For instance, I have to go on the national pension site every 3 months to pay. And because I only do it every 3 months, I forget until I'm halfway through that I have to use Firefox and not Safari because it doesn't work on Safari. So I know that. And I know in a way it's my fault, but why should I have to remember all those things? So these low-level annoyances are really, really too often. And if you succeed really well, people will enjoy your product and they'll recommend it to other people. Okay. So we aren't really in very good digital shape. We may be shaping people's lives, but it's not a very good shape we're in at the moment. False news, power in too few hands, censorship, surveillance. Information isn't free. The filter bubble, that we only see the things that we like to see. The online information torrent, overwhelming complexity. And this is one of the reasons for these constant little annoyances. Bill Buxton says that he thinks the market's going to become overwhelmed by the cumulative complexity of an ever-expanding wave of individually delightful, simple, useful, affordable, desirable technologies. So every designer, every company is doing their best to do their little thing, their little app, and do it really well. But in the end, that's not enough for our whole life, because we have now so many apps, so many things doing different ways, doing things in different ways. And so this is really wearing us out cognitively. I must say, I've been using computers for a very long time, and sometimes I think I cannot be bothered to learn another app. It might be useful, but life is too short. So when we have new technologies, we lose something, we gain something. And with any new one, some people gain and others lose. And we can see that this is happening in society today. And there's a growing realization that society needs to change, and we need to change the digital environment. I want to tell you a story. In 1912, Denmark was bankrupt. It had chosen the wrong side. It allied with Napoleon and not with the British, and it was hammered by the British. It was bankrupt. And they said, afterwards we didn't win, and the nation's capital was bombarded and left in rubble by the British, and there was no money left. We did something courageous and perhaps unexpected. We invested massively, and we put education at the core. In doing so, we laid the foundation for a golden age of art, ideas, democratic values, and an unprecedented bloom of social innovation. Adults educated themselves and each other in the folk high schools that offered non-formal education, while farmers united in cooperatives and workers formed unions. We created communities and ways of organizing ourselves that in turn inspired others around the globe. This is a terrific story to hear about today. We have the coronavirus, we have America just emerging from a terrible time. We in Britain have just done Brexit, which is another very, very disappointing for many people event. So what can we as digital designers do? I think we should rethink what's important. How much money is enough? How much do we need? What do we really need for a good life? The book, The Spirit Level, showed that more equality is better for both poor people and rich people. We can put our skills to work, build meaningful, useful, not trivial things, build social capital between people, good neighbourliness, envision alternative scenarios to inspire people. We can enrich people's lives with pleasure and satisfaction. Just the other day, I saw this application which has been built by an ex-student from Ivrea. There was a challenge for the ways that technology could maybe help people who are trying to manage emergency situations where you have lots of casualties. And it was aimed at helping people in this situation, the emergency responders, that might be able to use technical innovation to be more effective. So this was originally a side project for Francis Lee, who did it. But he won a prize for his proposal, and is now an application that's beginning to be used. So here is something where he had an idea and set about making it, just first on his own, or with a partner, in fact, and then bringing it to fruition. And I'd like to leave you with another example. This is Haiyan Zhang, and she was commissioned by the BBC to make a series of programs, partly to show how design and technology works, So you followed the designers through their process in each program each week, but also to show how technology could help people who were really marginalized because of some problem that they had. So things like preventing sheep stealing, making a camera for a disabled boy, designing games to help two teenagers with cystic fibrosis with the terribly boring exercises they have to do every day. But this one is for a young designer who got Parkinson's disease when she was 29.
Right, I'm going to try and replicate this here. We're off to a great start. I tend to kind of just avoid doing sketching and writing now because it's not really worth it if you get something like that. Anything you could do that would just make my hand do what I want it to do and be able to sign my name would be an incredible thing.
How do we even just begin to help her overcome this particular symptom of her tremors and helping her be able to regain her writing ability, her drawing ability? You know, I don't think we're ever going to get that back 100%. You know, my challenge is it's immense. Someone's made a spoon. It actually counteracts the tremors you get from Parkinson's. So the spoon actually vibrates in opposition to how your hand might be shaking, and therefore it is steady. I'm making a very rough prototype. And what this board does is I can connect into it through these wires, these tiny coin cell motors. So these motors will vibrate. Hello. Hi, I'm Alison. It's affecting something. I don't quite know what's happening. Something is going on with it. What this is doing is it's short-circuiting whatever feedback loop there is between the brain and the hand that's causing the tremors. I'm onto something, right? I'm onto something. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. It makes me forget that I have a tremor. I've done one of them for a long time. Passionate about it. Yeah, it's going to do a straight line. I've actually just written my name for like the first time in ages. I can't believe it. Love, it's called the Emma. Oh, brilliant. It's got my name on it.
So this was a collaboration between Hyan, who originally studied computer science and then came to Ivrea and did 2 years in human-computer interaction, user interface. And she worked with a product designer. She worked with people in the medical field. And it was these combinations of disciplines that helped to bring her to this terrific solution. So here is the whole idea of tech for good. So what we have to do as designers is design the right thing, and design the thing right. La cosa giusta nel modo giusto. So let's do it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I'm getting back with the camera.
Okay, I will get this.
Okay, I will.
Wow.
I will the sharing.
Okay, I can see you, Vinandra.
Yeah. Okay, I will share the screen so you can have a different.
Wow, as you can see, you're getting so many positive feedbacks. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was incredibly. So it seems that we defined this speech because this is a really introductory and explanatory element about the history and the value of design, and also how to bring together humanism, let's say, and design practice, and also let's say humanize the technology. So this is the next challenge, or was always the challenge for design. So thank you, Gillian. I think it was really inspiring. Also, I will ask to the students if there are any questions. I don't know, Andrea, if you have a look at to the chat.
Yes, well, actually, I see only a lot of positive feedbacks and hand clapping, no question up to now. So I would like to break the ice because I was really so touched by your presentation. It was really full of feeling and passion. I start from your comment that we aren't in a good shape, and this is very true now in this very moment, literally, because we are under the threat of coronavirus, and society needs to change. There is no doubt. But you know very well that change is difficult. And as a psychologist, I struggle with the problem of change every day. So to keep changing people and society, I do believe with you that we need to elevate the scope of design from building simple products to build experiences that help us changing, that foster change. But my provocation is, can we design for things like hope or resilience or moral elevation? So can we design, for example, to help people tackling complexity and creating meaning in their life? Is it feasible? Do we need to integrate new knowledge, or it is just unfeasible because these scopes are too high and too distant from the current design approaches?
Well, I'm always hopeful. So most of my life, or my professional life, I've been trying to persuade engineers and psychologists, indeed, of the value of design. Not that it should take the place of the others, but that it has a role to play. And I do realize, as I said in the talk, that we do have these very different ways of thinking, and we're not aware of them. And for instance, when I came to Italy, I was really surprised at how many people live with their parents, and their parents expect that, and the children expect it. In Britain, when I was young, at 18, it was made quite clear to me that when I left university, I'd be on my own. And that was fine. I was happy, my mother was happy. So, but these kind of very different sets of values are problematic if people are not aware of them, I think. But I think that generally there is more feeling around that things need to change. The book, The Spirit Level, is very interesting. It's written by two epidemiologists, and they just looked at statistics for happiness, healthiness, wealth, etc. And what they found was that countries where there's much less inequality, everybody is healthier, everybody is happier. So it's not just the rich, the poor that benefit from being a better share of the cake. Oh, thanks, Andrea. And it's the rich benefit as well. So I think there are things that are changing the ways that people think about things. It is difficult to change. Jaron Lanier talks about lock-in. So, for instance, we are locked into this idea of the graphical interface with windows, mouse and pointer, files, etc. As it happens, it works pretty well. But the various people have been trying to think of new ways of organizing the material we have in our computer, and none of it has stuck. And now, because everybody who has a computer is used to working in that way, it's very difficult to change.
Well,
this is true. And Gillian, I was asking you a question. So you say that you spend all your working life in, let's say, spreading the design value throughout organization and also institution and so on. Someone is talking that today is the best period ever to be a designer because business is understanding the design value. What do you think about this? Is that true that this presence is evolving in real, or it's only, let's say, a matter of, let's say, fashion? Fashion is connected within the UX, the service design, increasing performance instead value.
I do think it is the best time that there's been. I think the change, I know in the past 10 years, say, is huge. There are more than 100,000 people who belong to the IXDA, the Interaction Design Association. Anybody can join, so they aren't necessarily designers themselves, but they're interested enough to sign up. 100,000 people, that's a lot of people. And I think that there has been a big change in the past 10 years. But my ex-students still lament the difficulties they have in holding, when the chips are down, when there are problems, its design is seen as an optional extra. Of course, not in every company, but in many companies.
Okay.
I think one of the things that made the really big change was when Apple became the richest company in the world and had the most expensive computer and sold the most expensive computers. And the whole reason was that they were more beautiful and they were better designed. And the whole ecology of Apple, the software, the applications, the services, etc., was really beautifully designed. And I think then people thought, oh, wow, that difference
can be done in a different way.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So again, Gillian, I wish really thanks you for this, let's say, introductory talk and also inspiring session. Maybe we will keep you updated about the evolution of the master, and maybe we will, let's say, maybe we will have the honor to have you back in some occasion later on, because this is 1 year long activity, so maybe we can have another talk, other lesson, if you will have a pleasure to be for us. For now, thanks for your kindness and also for the really exciting presentation.
Good. Well, students, you're starting on a great thing. So I envy you that I'm not starting all over again. So goodbye.
Goodbye.